The stock market has been propped up by the Federal Reserve's policies. That is of exceptionally low interest rates and quantitative easing, aka money printing. But what happens when the Federal Reserve reverses their policies? It is undoubtedly true that you have the stock market and the Federal Reserve's balance sheet being directly proportional. Now, this is an irrefutable fact. You cannot deny that. Let's get into some of the news today. Alibaba is all the rage today as it's making front page news here. But the question remains, do individual stocks matter so much when the actual underlying economic activity is dismal, to say the least? Let's get into some of these right now. This is billionaires are hoarding piles of cash. And according to this new census here, world's billionaires are holding on an average of $600 million in cash each. This is a very, very large number, showing you that individuals are afraid and they're unwilling to put down their money into where it needs to be. Julian Robertson sees two bubbles brewing. So let's get into what he said. The first bubble is that bonds are at ridiculous level so that the saver, the small charity, has no place to put his money except into stocks. That's exactly what I have said, and they're doing this on purpose. When you put the interest rates down all the way, it forces people into riskier assets. And then when stocks don't get enough return, people go to even riskier assets. That's when the collateralized debt obligations, you have the credit default swaps, and all this sort of thing that banks get into because they need more and more returns. And it says, I think that the situation is serious on that score. Nobody seems to be concerned about that. But I assure you, I myself am concerned. And it's not just me. The IMF warns of excessive risk-taking on stock prices. And this is what he said, risk-taking and the equity valuations as priced in virtually all major asset classes now look stretched. That's exactly true, can't be denied. The OECD saying the same thing, cutting the US growth forecasts on warns of risky assets. Continued fragility, a word that I use often because where there is risk, there is fragility, of the Eurozone means that risk assets are mispriced. Absolutely all of these assets seem to be mispriced right now because of the fraudulent way that they design things. Now, when you have a system that's built like this is a diagram from my book, of course, you're going to have misplaced real assets, and all this money that's flowing in is going to be misplaced. Look at the way this works. The US sells debt to the Fed gives that money to it, and it's just a circular thing. But where does all that debt end up? Well, it ends up in a big pile that the Federal Reserve has, and just so happens right now their balance sheet being directly proportional to the stock market increase, something you can't hide. And last but not least, Argentina's Fernandez to meet billionaire investor Soros in New York. Now, this is a country that has been just torn up. I believe the inflation rate is now at about 40%, at least the ones that are willing to admit. And that's something that the people cannot withstand for a long time. It just simply cannot happen. 40% inflation, you will destroy the savers, and you will destroy economically everything that's happening in the country. And this is something that is looking like it's going to happen in the US. People don't think it's ever going to happen. However, hyperinflation has occurred twice before, so it's not real all that far-fetched to think about it, and it happens in many countries around the world. Argentina is not the only one with such a high rate of inflation. This is going to destroy the savers because you have these policies of the bankers, letting them control things, letting them take advantage of you, and this is exactly what happens currently in the US. The politicians and the bankers collude together to make these laws to essentially screw over the middle class. If you found this informative, please give me a thumbs up, and that you will become an insider as well. It's very important to get on there because it's totally free, first of all, and it's all my best information, and it's at themoneygps.com. You scroll down to the bottom and fill in your email address, and you get occasional emails from me with short, concise info.